Did you hate him for that?
No. He even says it's a very unfortunate thing. I'm the first of 10 children from 8 wives.
Behind the silver glow of Hollywood's golden era, there were shadows long enough to haunt entire generations. For every glamorous red carpet smile, there was a child trembling behind a locked door. For every dazzling Oscar speech, a broken whisper in the night. Why wasn't I enough?
Why did you tell her I got expelled?
Because you did get expelled!
That is a lie.
1. Joan Crawford, Mommy Dearest. In the 1940s, Joan Crawford was the queen of Hollywood perfection. Immaculate, poised, and fiercely driven. But inside her Beverly Hills mansion, her daughter Christina lived in a different world. There were no soft goodnights, no bedtime kisses, only rules, fear, and a rage that could erupt over something as small as a wire hanger. Christina later wrote that her childhood was a performance in terror. Crawford, obsessed with control and public image, demanded absolute obedience. When the cameras turned off, she became a tyrant, scrubbing floors in gowns, punishing her children for minor mistakes, and turning motherhood into a stage for her frustrations. When Mommy Dearest was released in 1978, it shocked audiences, not only for its brutality, but for what it revealed: that Hollywood's most glamorous mother had been her child's worst nightmare. Crawford denied everything, of course. She died with her legacy intact in the public eye, but her children carried the truth. 2. Bing Crosby, the crooner with a heavy hand. To the world, Bing Crosby was the voice of Christmas, warm, soothing, and timeless. His songs comforted millions during war and depression. But at home, his sons described a life of strict discipline and emotional coldness. Gary Crosby, the eldest, revealed that behind the gentle smile was a man who used belts and fists to enforce respect. In interviews, Gary said he was a tyrant with a heart of ice. Crosby demanded perfection, good grades, clean manners, and no tears. He told his boys that showing emotion was weakness. In the shadow of such cruelty, 2 of Bing's sons would later take their own lives. The man who brought joy to millions left heartbreak inside his own home, proof that fame cannot teach tenderness. 3. Henry Fonda, the silence of a father. Henry Fonda's face embodied the stoic American hero, noble, calm, and righteous. But those who knew him personally, especially his children Jane and Peter, tell a different story, a man incapable of warmth. Jane Fonda once said, "My father could talk about politics or art for hours, but he never once asked how I felt." Growing up, she longed for his approval, performing her way into his heart, but he never opened it. Their relationship thawed only near the end of his life, when age finally stripped away the armor. But for decades, his silence left Jane with wounds no applause could heal. Fonda's tragedy wasn't cruelty, it was absence. A kind of emotional frost that froze his children out of his world. 4. Ethel Gum, the mother who sold the dream. Before Judy Garland was a legend, she was just little Frances Gum, a girl with an extraordinary voice and a mother who saw dollar signs. Ethel Gum was the archetype of the stage mother, pushing Judy to perform even when she was exhausted, ill, or crying for rest. She kept her daughter awake with pills, then calmed her down with others, a pattern that would destroy Judy's health and steal her innocence. When Judy was only 13, she was already being fed amphetamines by the studio, with her mother's permission. Ethel didn't see a child, she saw a rising star. Years later, Garland said bitterly, "My mother only loved me when I was working." It's one of the most haunting confessions in Hollywood's history, the price of fame, measured in sleepless nights and shattered childhoods. 5. Ryan O'Neal, the charmer who broke his children's hearts. In the 1970s, Ryan O'Neal was a golden boy, handsome, charismatic, adored by millions. But his family life was a battlefield. His daughter, Tatum O'Neal, won an Oscar at age 10 for Paper Moon, where she starred alongside her father. But off-screen, he treated her not as a daughter, but as a rival. He mocked her, competed with her fame, and left her feeling unwanted and small. Tatum later described him as a man who didn't know how to love. They tried to reconcile later in life, but decades of pain stood between them, a reminder that charm and cruelty can live in the same smile. 6. Mildred Turner, the mother who built and broke a star. Before Lana Turner became the sweater girl, she was just a teenager from Idaho with a mother named Mildred, who saw fame as salvation. Mildred was a single mother in the Great Depression, scraping by on dreams and grit. When Lana's beauty caught attention, her mother saw an escape, not for Lana, but for both of them. She moved her daughter to Hollywood and began molding her into a product. At 16, Lana was being escorted to parties far too adult for her age. Her mother stood nearby, proud and blind to the danger. Years later, Lana would say she never really had a childhood, only a career. Her mother's ambition turned her into an object before she knew who she was. When scandals later tore through Lana's life, affairs, heartbreaks, and tragedy, she said quietly, "I never learned what love really looked like." 7. Tippi Hedren, the mother who directed her daughter's pain. Tippi Hedren was the epitome of icy beauty, Hitchcock's muse, the golden-haired vision of the birds. But behind that perfect frame was a woman trying to live through her own broken career, and she passed that bitterness to her daughter, Melanie Griffith. Tippi wanted Melanie to succeed, but under her control. She decided her daughter would live the dream she lost, and when Melanie rebelled, the tension turned toxic. At only 14, Melanie was already exposed to the wild, dangerous Hollywood scene. Her mother even let her live with adult actors, including Don Johnson, a choice that later shocked the public. Though Tippi later claimed she only wanted to protect her daughter, the result was the opposite. Melanie grew up too fast, learning love through chaos, not care. Fame, once again, had consumed the family bond, a repeating tragedy of mothers chasing redemption through their children. 8. Anthony Perkins, the ghost father. To the public, Anthony Perkins will forever be Norman Bates, lonely, repressed, broken. But those who knew him knew he wasn't just playing a role, he was living one. Perkins' father, Osgood Perkins, was a Broadway actor who died when Anthony was just 5. Yet even in life, Osgood had been emotionally absent, a man who treated his son as a burden, not a joy. Anthony grew up surrounded by silence and distance, and that void shaped him into the quiet, anxious man Hollywood later exploited. When he became a father himself, he repeated the pattern: secretive, fearful, emotionally unreachable. His sons have said that they barely knew him, even while he was alive. The tragedy of Anthony Perkins is the tragedy of inheritance, when neglect becomes legacy and the cycle continues, unbroken. 9. Rose Hovick, the monster behind Gypsy. Before Broadway turned her into the infamous Mama Rose, Rose Hovick was a real woman, and a terrifying one. The mother of vaudeville stars June Havoc and Gypsy Rose Lee. Rose lived through her daughters, driving them like soldiers through endless rehearsals and sleepless nights. She screamed, schemed, and manipulated, desperate to taste the success she never earned herself. Gypsy Rose Lee later wrote that her mother once pulled a gun on another performer for getting in her daughter's way. The daughters called her Mama Dearest long before Christina Crawford ever did. Rose's obsession destroyed her family. Both daughters escaped her, but neither healed completely. In the end, Broadway turned her madness into legend, and Mama Rose became the symbol of the stage mother from hell. 10. Mickey Rooney, the father who vanished behind a smile. Mickey Rooney spent his life in front of cameras, a boy wonder, a national treasure, the eternal showman. But his children remember a man who never came home. Rooney had 9 children and 8 marriages. Between film sets, tours, and scandals, he had no time for any of them. His daughter Kelly once said, "My father loved the world, but he didn't love us." Behind his comic energy was a desperate need for attention, one that always came before family. He left behind fame, fortune, and emptiness, proving once more that success and love rarely share the same home. 11. Charlie Chaplin, the great dictator at home. To the world, Charlie Chaplin was a genius, the little tramp who made people laugh through their tears. But at home, the laughter stopped. Chaplin's perfectionism didn't end on set. He brought it home, demanding obedience, silence, and admiration from his children. His eldest son, Charles Jr., said that life in their mansion felt like living with a ruler, not a father. He controlled every detail, what they read, how they spoke, who they saw. His temper, when challenged, could freeze a room. Some of his children adored him. Others feared him. All of them carried the weight of being raised by a legend too large to love them simply. In one interview, his son said quietly, "He belonged to the world, not to us." That sentence captures the tragedy of Chaplin's home, a place where the greatest comedian alive couldn't make his children smile. 12. Errol Flynn, the rogue who mocked his own blood. Errol Flynn lived the fantasy of every 1940s moviegoer, a dashing adventurer, a laughing rebel. But behind that charisma was cruelty disguised as charm. His daughter Deirdre described him as distant and sarcastic, a man who found pleasure in belittling others, even his own children. He joked about their looks, their weight, their intelligence. If they cried, he laughed. His son Sean Flynn followed in his father's footsteps as an actor and adventurer, but he vanished in Cambodia while covering the Vietnam War. Errol never lived to see it, yet his legacy of emotional neglect lingered like a curse. Flynn's arrogance made him adored by millions, but it also made him unreachable as a father. He could sword fight on screen, but in real life, he ran from intimacy faster than anyone could chase him. 13. Loretta Young and Clark Gable, the secret that stole a childhood. This story is one of Hollywood's darkest, not because of violence, but because of silence. In 1935, during the filming of The Call of the Wild, Loretta Young became pregnant by her co-star Clark Gable. Both were married to other people. A scandal like that could destroy careers, so the studio and Loretta's family conspired to hide the pregnancy. She disappeared for months, adopted her own baby later, and raised her daughter Judy Lewis as if she were not her real child. Judy grew up sensing the lie. Her father's dimpled chin, her mother's distance, the unspoken truth in every photograph. She didn't learn who her parents truly were until she was an adult. "My whole life," Judy once said, "I was the secret that shouldn't have existed." That's what Hollywood did to family. It turned a little girl's birth into a scandal to be erased. 14. Marvin Gaye Sr., When Faith Turned to Murder. Marvin Gaye's voice could heal a soul, but the father who gave him his name destroyed him. Marvin Gaye Sr. was a preacher, strict, angry, obsessed with control. He ruled his home with fear and violence, mixing religion with rage. Marvin Jr. grew up terrified, constantly beaten and humiliated. His father despised his success, calling his music sinful. In 1984, during a heated argument, Marvin Gaye Sr. shot his son dead, the day before Marvin's 45th birthday. The man who preached God's love had murdered his own child. When reporters asked why, he said he was asking for it. That moment became one of the darkest in music history, the final horrifying proof that some fathers never learn to love. 15. Joe Jackson, Turning Children into a Business. For the world, Joe Jackson was the father of the Jackson 5, the man who discovered Michael. For his children, he was the reason they feared coming home. He trained his sons like soldiers, waking them in the night to rehearse until they collapsed. A missed note meant a beating. A wrong move brought insults. Michael once said that his father stood over him with a belt while he sang. Joe told the press he was simply building discipline. But discipline without love becomes abuse. Even when his children became global icons, they still trembled when he called. Michael spent his adult life trying to forgive him. Yet, his songs, his loneliness, his endless search for childhood spoke louder than any words. Joe Jackson's ambition made legends, but it destroyed the peace of every soul it touched. 16. Judy Garland, the star who became her mother's daughter. Judy Garland once swore she'd never be like her own mother, Ethel Gum, the woman who forced her to perform, who gave her pills to stay awake and pills to sleep. But pain has a way of echoing through generations. When Judy became a mother herself to Liza Minnelli, Lorna, and Joey Luft, she loved them deeply, but she was also drowning. Haunted by her addictions, crushed by studio pressure, and desperate for affection, she became unreliable, fragile, and sometimes frightening. Liza adored her, but she also feared her moods. When she was up, it was heaven, Liza said. When she was down, the whole house went dark. Judy wasn't cruel by choice. She was broken by the same system that once broke her as a child. Her story reminds us that tragedy in Hollywood doesn't always come from monsters. Sometimes it comes from people who were victims first. 17. Sean Connery, the cold man behind the 007 mask. To millions, Sean Connery was the ultimate man, confident, charming, indestructible. But to his son Jason, he was a wall that could not be climbed. Connery's fame consumed him. He demanded perfection and distance, believing discipline was the same as love. When Jason tried to follow in his father's footsteps, Sean dismissed him harshly, warning him that the world doesn't owe anyone success. Their relationship fractured for decades. Jason once said, "My father taught me strength, but not warmth." In his later years, Connery mellowed. But by then, the space between father and son had become permanent. Two proud men, both too stubborn to say, "I miss you." Even heroes, it seems, can fail the people who see them as gods. 18. Lucille Ball, the queen of comedy and the tyranny of perfection. Lucille Ball built her empire on laughter. She made the world adore her, but behind the studio doors, she ran her home like a set. Every line rehearsed, every gesture judged. Her daughter, Lucy Arnaz, once described her as a perfectionist first, a mother second. Lucille wanted everything to be flawless, her shows, her image, her family. Mistakes made her furious. Her children grew up walking on eggshells, afraid to disappoint the woman who made America laugh. Lucille didn't hit or scream often. She simply withdrew her affection, and that hurt more than anger ever could. It's the quiet kind of cruelty, the kind that comes from loving success more than softness. Her legacy as a comedian is eternal, but her children remember a woman who forgot to take off the mask even at home. 19. Peter Sellers, love as a weapon. Peter Sellers could make anyone laugh, except the people he loved. His genius came with paranoia, insecurity, and violent mood swings. He saw relationships as performances, not partnerships. His daughter Victoria recalled how he'd turn on her in an instant, accusing her of betrayal, then apologizing in tears moments later. He craved adoration, and when he didn't get it, he punished those closest to him. In his final years, Sellers tried to make peace, but his body gave out before his mind could. His children have spent decades trying to separate the man from the myth, a task almost impossible when love and pain come from the same person. Peter Sellers shows us how brilliance without empathy can turn genius into cruelty. 20. Modern fame, when cameras replace care. We like to believe Hollywood has changed, that today's stars, with all their therapy and awareness, would never repeat the mistakes of the past. But scroll through the tabloids, and you'll see familiar patterns. Parents chasing fame through their children, exploiting them on social media, turning every birthday into content. From reality TV families to influencer dynasties, the stage has only moved online. The same hunger for attention still devours what matters most: innocence, safety, love. A child's tears don't trend as well as a smile, and so the cycle continues. In the end, Hollywood's shine fades, but its scars remain. Fame built their names, but love was the price. And for many children of the stars, the spotlight never warmed. It only burned.